On. So welcome to Growth OD. So I want to give a couple of acknowledgments here. Um, First, I want to thank Tom Lemke again, like I did last week. But I was looking at November 30th, and you can see I use his gratitude journal here. And it had a, it says, I am thankful for today, for it holds the seeds of tomorrow's joys. And it's Aiken proverb. I don't know who Aiken is, but I'm going to ask Tom if he knows. Hate to put you on the spot. But I really got into this Aiken proverb. And then this morning I went through 93 verses in the Bible that mention seed, all different kinds of ways. And I was thinking about if I just add the word story seeds, like I'm thankful for today's story seeds for tomorrow's joy that they harvest. And I'm thinking of that in relation to becoming the topic for today, because if if I can recall those little wow moments in my past, like Vanessa got me to do, you know, and then I can I can figure out, okay, if I water them a little bit, nourish them, they can turn into these story seeds that I plant in my life, and tomorrow's harvest can happen. But I don't know, Tom, do you know anything about this Aiken proverb? Or if you don't, it's okay. Oh, I could do some more research. He's talking, but the ghost.
Unmute. Um, I have to look that up, David. I found a number of various old proverbs when I was looking this up, like Aboriginal, and there's a lot of really interesting things from long ago. But I'll do a little research and put something in the chat about it.
Okay, get back to us on it next week or something. You don't have to read about it now. But it just occurred to me when I went through all the references to seeds. It's just Matthew, Mark, Luke, I think it talks about the mustard seed example. If you cast a seed and you try to plant it on the rocks, well, you're going to get a little spindly sprout and it's going to dry out in the desert here. And if you get in the bramble bushes, it's just going to get strangled like the goat heads we talked about last week. And then if you get it on good soil, actually, and you give it a little water, then it's going to be very bountiful. You're going to get a big harvest. And that's all through the Bible. I mean, a lot of them, the seed is Jesus and other kinds of meanings of the word seed. But really got me thinking about becoming and how that works. And that was the basis of today's adventure, looking at becoming. And it's in two parts. Going to go through what I've discerned about becoming, and then in the part two, after the first breakout, we'll go to Domino's Pizza, which is a very classic tale of a turnaround, big turnaround example when they actually listened to their customers who hated their pizza and said it was tastes like cardboard and you put ketchup on it, right? And they were so embarrassed, but they admitted that they had screwed it all up, and then turned into a major event. But it also taught me something about marketing too today, that I've noticed that the only people filling out my story seeds of leadership are people that are in the group. I guess there was one other person that filled it out, and I won't give his name, but I've invited him to Monday, see if he'll come. And he's actually a book writer, but we'll see how that goes. But it occurred to me that it's not like just throw your seeds out there and say, "Oh, here's 1,000 emails," and then nobody replies, and you go like, "Well, that was worthless." Fell on kind of rocky ground. So then I was thinking, what I need to do is just really care for the people who did fill it out, and a lot of you are here, and then do it that way. You know what I mean? But I want to show you something I wrote just this morning. I want to make sure it's in the right website. Yeah. Okay. Before I turn to that, um, because it was kind of inspired by Tom's work. And Tom, let's just say, don't you have a new book out? You just did another book, a gratitude book, because I paid money for it, so I expect to get it. So,
Oh, thank you. Um, yeah, I did this Thank You Jesus 365 days of prayers of gratitude, and it's doing pretty well. And I also came out with the Spanish version of it because there's a lot of Spanish people, and I have a journal that goes with the book, David, that picks up on the same Bible passage each day so that you can read prayer and then reflect and do your journaling with that prayer. So that's all on Amazon now and ready to go.
okay, that must be the one I ordered. So I'm going to have two journals and a book to read every single morning of Tom
You
Lim.
can write left-handed and right-handed as you're philosophizing about your day.
But it's transforming my life, and I'm about to, I don't know. Uh, I don't know what's happening to me, Tom, but there's a transformation going on. It's spiritual. So thank you.
Well, that's great, David. Thank you. Thank you for buying the book. I appreciate that.
No problem. Anytime. Let's see, remove pin. All right. Let's try to see how this goes. Let's see. Somebody's got something chattering in the background. I'm going to mute everybody. Okay. There we go. So let me bring something up here for you to see. Okay. Share and there and background. You got to push all these secondary buttons or your thing doesn't work right. Make me smaller. That's perfect. All right. Okay, so this is the Growth OD website, and I just want to show you a couple of things. The Story Seed leadership is at the top, and I think I'm going to add Vanessa's up here too, so those links will be there. This is a kind of a meme I put together for um, the three of us that are starting this session on Friday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And all you got to you can get the link right here, and you can send me an email for your spot. And this is what I kind of wrote this morning about the story seeds. So I just wanted to read to you. These story seeds of resilience, purpose, and authentic self are little while moments that yearn to grow into abundant harvest, drawing from the ancient wisdom of a parable of the sower, Matthew 13, Mark, Luke, and Psalm 126, promises that those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. I really thought about that in relation to the veterans and their family because there can be a lot of tears and stress, but with the right coaching, and we need consultants too to coach the Army. I'll talk a little bit about that. But anyway, this approach recognizes that every person carries seeds of potential that may have fallen on hardened paths, eaten by doubt, rocky grounds, scorched by trauma, or been choked by the goat head puncture vines of life's overwhelming circumstances. For veterans and the family who have walked through the valleys of service, sacrifice, and sometimes unimaginable loss, Quantum Coaching Sprint creates a sacred space where those story seeds can finally find good soil, and not just the Army, it can be Air Force, Marines, etc., National Guard, where tears of sowing transform into sheaves of joy, where faith, as small as a mustard seed, becomes a foundation of exponential growth, where the quantum leap from surviving to thriving becomes just possible, not just possible, but inevitable. through personalized trauma-informed dialogue that honors each person's unique journey. Coaches trained in Story Seeds of Leadership method help participants recognize that they are not just survivors of storms, they are becoming buoys and life preservers for others. By the way, the name buoy, boji, translates in Danish to buoy, so I've been using that metaphor a lot. And their stories becoming beacons of hope and transformation that ripple out to create abundant harvests, family communities, and organizations. And the reason I mention that the military needs consultants is because when you're in the military, it says to the family, do not bring up a complaint or any problem to the veteran because we need them in the field and we don't want bogged down by family issues. And then they say to the veteran, do not bring any of your complaints or sorrows or anything to the family because we need a tough family back there to support you. So they come out from service both blocked. Family is blocked, veterans blocked from actually communicating about their sorrows. And so it's kind of like rocky ground when you're dealing with veterans in the military and families, because you have to get over the whole attitude that they've been socialized in. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. We just endure. So that makes coaching a little more difficult when you're dealing with somebody and you say, well, can you tell me about it? And they say, no, we don't talk about it. My grandfather, World War I, didn't talk about it. My dad, Korea and Pacific, World War II, did not talk about it. I was Vietnam and I talk about it. I'm sorry. I break the mold, you know, um, because if you don't break the mold, they don't talk about it. You know what I mean? So I start real slow and easy with a lot of times just having them pick up something on their desk, like a pen or something, and say, or pick out two or three items and say, well, how's that loot that you got? What's that about? So I'll just ask them about something very peripheral to their military event and get them talking about that thing. It's called sand tray approach. I'm not going to do that Friday because I've also learned just ways of talking to people without a bunch of artifacts there. But I did want to mention that it's not your typical kind of coaching situation where people are just going to, hi, Carl. We're talking about the Friday event that you signed up for, and I really appreciate you for doing that, Carl. And we're organizing support for that. So it's about becoming, and that's what this session is about. I work a lot with energy. Those of you that know me, I work a lot with energy, and not just energy from my Christian pathway, but from Gurdev Shitsubhanu, who I met through Grace Ann and gave me my Jain name, Arihanta, which means conqueror of inner enemies, which is totally good for a veteran and somebody who was addicted to alcohol and probably still is. I don't drink, just water. And it's just that coming out of a war zone, there's so many hidden enemies in your mind, in your emotions, in your memories to deal with. It's a lot easier just not to deal with them, you know? So I'll say that much. But the thing I learned in talking to a veteran is some of them don't want to even talk to you if you're not a veteran because they don't trust you. They don't trust that you're not going to judge them, um, start giving them a bunch of solutions. You can't give veterans solutions. Can't give family members solutions. It's not about that. They have to, if they don't discover it themselves, you can facilitate that discovery. But if you start saying, well, why don't you go get some therapy from a psychologist or something like that? Or why don't you go take a walk every morning and read some scripture or something like that? they will throw the book at you, probably. They will be hurt instead of helped. So that's what I've learned. I'll give you an example. We were at the university developing the methodology that Grace Ann and I created called restoring process. And we taught the methodology to a number of people, faculty members, doctoral students, and they were doing evidence-based research. So they didn't want Grace Ann and I to do it. They wanted us to teach other people to do it, and they would do it. And that would be this double-blind study they were doing. But they had to call me in because they got a veteran, this professor, very good professor in human sciences, was coaching him. And he was just flipping out. He was just flipping out on her, getting enraged and angry. So I had to come in and calm him the hell down, calm the hell out of him down. And, it's when you listen to his rants, he's there with his wife. His wife speaks two languages and learns a third language while he's on a deployment. They got a child delivered while he's on a second deployment, comes home, and the child speaks Spanish, which was the mother's first language, and the husband didn't speak Spanish, and he's of a different race. So you got a racial thing, a language thing, a marital thing. He can't communicate with his own child. He's mad as hell and not going to take it anymore, as they say. So it takes a while to kind of slowly get through those layers of anger before you get to the issues that you could possibly coach on. You know what I mean? And having another vet there that says, yeah, I understand what you're talking about because I've been there, where I come home and I don't feel I'm part of the family anymore. And that's on me. And that's the part I can tell them. That's on me because I've changed, not just the family, but I've changed. And so slowly I get a bit of rapport going. But you can see how difficult it can be with this language, cultural time, new member of the family. The whole communication thing is totally boggled. So I don't know if that helps you understand where we're going today. But the reason I need you all, if any of you can help, is just facilitate a breakout. And I would really love you to learn how to work with veterans. There's Igno van Nykirk. Would you like to introduce yourself? We already introduced ourselves here. I am recording, and I can pause the recording if you want. But love it if you come off mic and say hello.
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 Hi, David. So did you speak to me right now?
Yeah, I'm speaking to you.
Yeah. So it's Igno van die Kerk from South Africa. I've joined. I just saw your email, connected on LinkedIn, and yeah, very interested in your work. I'm working on studies in storytelling in organizations. Also have been in the South African Army in the Bush War. So have some experience in that. So both common interests in the work you do.
Well, thank you you're welcome here. We're going to do a breakout in a few minutes, just in about a minute or two, and talking about the whole topic of becoming, how one becomes. And we were talking about, well, you plant some seeds in your life and you help them grow, and then hopefully they harvest something worth your effort. So that's what we're going to do. So I want to show you a video and then go into breakout. But first I want to answer Tom's question. Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks, David. My brother was a gunner on a Marine helicopter in Vietnam. And he never really shared much. And I asked him one time, I said, Dan, what was the scariest moment of your time in Vietnam? Was it the first flight that you took? And he said, no, Tom, it was the last one. Because for all of those missions that we flew into and lost people and everything else, the last day I put that flight helmet on, I thought, pray to God that, sorry, that I would make it through, which he did. But he never talked about any of that his whole life. Once in a while, if he had a few drinks, he might let out one thing, but it was a great secret. And when he was in the hospital, when he died, and he did die from Agent Orange, by the way, um, the he met with the minister, and I think for the first time I saw him at peace with what he had seen and done. So he went his whole life. There were a lot of guys that just never talked about it, and he was one of them. He never even shared it with his wife, so none of us really know what actually went on.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Hey, you get bits and pieces of it. They'll tell the family they're going to say something, but they tend not to go in to the deep dark rabbit hole. And I don't ask them to go into the rabbit hole. That's the difference between coaching, consulting people from war experience. The American military, I don't know how it is in South Africa, but in the American military, they have you relive the experience. It's called reliving through immersion. And they'll have the same kinds of sights and smells and noise that they would hear in combat. And they want them to drop right back into their most emotional moment of their life, and mostly that big trauma. Well, I don't do that. I say, I don't want you to go there. We will stand at the edge of the rabbit hole and I'll ask you questions like, how are you doing? What kind of thing would you like to have happen by the end of the session? Um, how are things in your family? So I'll skate around the top, but I'm not going to travel down into their worst life memory and because as a psychology person, it reinforces the trauma. Now, that immersion therapy is good if you catch them within about 3 to 20 minutes after the event, right? After that, 75% of the people do not return to the second session for immersion therapy, repeated exposure therapy. Um, I tend to think the work Grace Ann and I do works a lot better. Hey, Igno, can I say Igno? Is that right, or am I mispronouncing?
Yeah, no, it's 100%. It's actually Igno. That's an Afrikaans
Igno.
one, David. But I thought maybe I'd share this. I don't want to intrude or anything. And but what's really interesting about what you're saying about the immersion with the South African Bush War, I'm not sure how many people have experience of that or knowledge of that. But what was interesting also the end of apartheid in South Africa countrywide, which meant that many soldiers who were forced to do national service. I mean, we were like 17, 18 years old. We had to go and do national service. It was compulsory. And then all of a sudden in 94 there was peace, and you were not allowed to talk about the fact that what you'd fought for 20 years was wrong, or perceived to be wrong, because it was also part of the Cold War on one side, but you were also protecting the racial stuff in the other side. And our big dilemma in South Africa, what is really interesting, is the silence of soldiers who for 20, you talk about immersion, for us, like 20 to 30 years. Luckily, I was never in that kind of situation, but people who had killed people, who were forced to shoot people, or suddenly realized, but we were on the wrong side of history, and there was nothing to say about it because there was new government, everything was peaceful. Mandela came along, everybody said all is okay. And now suddenly, 20, 30 years down the line, we find that all was not okay because just the fact that they never had a voice, because you didn't want to say you were heroes, you didn't want to say you were fighting in that war, despite the fact that you were a child. So I'm just putting that out there as another interesting case, which maybe, you'd find interesting given the context of what you've just shared.
I appreciate the comment. It was totally relevant, and bring it in any time. I mean, I appreciate it very, very much. Because I want to give people a sense of how important it is to be able to do organization consulting to the military. You know, how do they deal with people when they've, like myself, fought in Vietnam? I was a company clerk. I didn't, I had an M14 and in my squad an M60 machine gun and grenades and all the rest of it. So, and we did experience fire, but that was not a war that America took to its heart and embraced. We didn't get these, "Hey, why don't you take a seat? Why don't you get in first on the plane here, Sergeant Boji?" No, it was, "Why don't you disappear, you muck," you know, for what you did in Vietnam. And so that's a lot of shame and guilt to deal with. Yeah. So that's a good one. So we're going to put all that aside and just deal with what is the main constructs here of becoming. And I'm going to open up a little bit and share some personal things um, in that tape because I've been getting feedback that I haven't been doing enough sharing my own personal thing. I've just been trying to sell books and get people signed up for seminars and stuff. And I have done some with you all. Those who know me, you know some of my stories, but um, it occurs to me if I don't take the first effort to share a story, why should anybody come to Growth OD? Why should anybody come to Enthinkment? You know what I mean? So I'm going to set up for the next piece of this. Let's see if I can get to it through the website. Let's see if that'll work. Let's see. We'll try and go back. All right. Hopefully you're still seeing the screen. Is it still there? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I worked out the schedule. So today's becoming, and I just want to alert you, I would like to meet next Friday with whoever can come, and then the 8th we'll do Between, which is about creating a world of friendship, holiday break, and then we'll do Beyond, which ends the series. And then I would like those of you who are ready to do your own session. I know I did a rehearsal with Jack. I think he's ready. Vanessa's got something, maybe Tom and Olivia. And maybe just do a series of those sessions that are going to be courses in the Ken Long episodes. So we'll talk about that later. But let's look here. So I'm going to show you part 1 of this film, and let's see if it actually works. A theory of becoming as a leader, coach, hearing it, consultant, or entire organization. So I started with kind of my work in Mikhail Bakhtin. I spent 10 years looking at Heidegger and all the theories of becoming there. And I decided, hey, it's time to step away from Heidegger. Man's anti-Semitic and affiliated with Hitler. So, and I'm one of the critics that says that his theory of authenticity needs to be suspiciously looked at. But he does mention the word becoming 34 times in Being in Time. Then I switched to Karen Barad, which I was studying for a long time as well. And she has a theory of becoming that's part of her agential realism and the agential cut. So that's another way to look at becoming. And finally, I said, Okay, I'm really influenced by Tom Lemke's books. So I decided to return to my Christian roots and also my Jainism roots, but here it's the Christian ones, and go through the Old and New Testaments like I used to do with a concordance and looking for the word becoming and notions of becoming. And I found another approach to becoming. So I put all three under a lens and said, well, what can I use to understand what we call growth OD, growth organizational development of leaders, consultants, coaches, artists, and the whole organization? And this is what I came up with. For the Enthinkment Circle, we're going to review it today and see if it has any merit for the Growth OD Monday meeting coming up on Zoom. So go to growthod.org, go to enthinkment.com, and you'll find out all about it. I try to cite the sources there, and we got a really good think tank going to go over this whole thing today.
Today, we're jumping into the work of Dr. David Michael Boje and his really fascinating theory of becoming. It's a powerful way to think about how leaders and, well, whole organizations actually transform.
So let's start with a big question, one that kind of cuts through a lot of the leadership advice we always hear. We get told, transform overnight. Just flip a switch and you're a new and improved leader. But let's be real. Is that really how growth works? The truth is, as Dr. Boje saw, and as probably all of us have felt, it's way different. Real growth isn't some clean, straight line to the top. It's usually a pretty messy, winding road. You've got these amazing moments of progress and then these super frustrating setbacks. And it was exactly this gap between the fantasy and the reality that pushed him to create a more honest model for how we become something new.
Okay, so let's get into the core concept here. At the absolute heart of Boje's theory is this term he came up with, and it's a really powerful one.
That term is forecaring. And this one idea, it really asks us to shift how we think. It's about pulling yourself out of just putting out fires all day. Forecaring is this active, intentional process of looking ahead, of really anticipating what's coming down the road and letting that vision of the future shape what you do today. You can think of it as the engine that drives this whole journey of becoming.
So what does this journey actually look like? Well, Boje breaks it all down into a super practical framework with 3 distinct stages, and I bet any leader or organization out there is going to recognize these immediately.
First up is naive zeal. You know the type, right? Think of a brand new startup founder or manager who just got promoted. They've got endless energy, massive ambition, but not a lot of that hard-won, battle-tested wisdom. Boje actually compares this to the simple in the book of Proverbs. It's this critical fork in the road. Are you going to choose to listen and learn? Or are you just going to charge ahead kind of blind?
Now, if you take that path of learning, you enter stage 2. You become the disciplined learner. And this is where the growth really, really accelerates. This is all about actively hunting for feedback, building a tight circle of advisors you can trust, and making reflection a non-negotiable part of how you make decisions. This is where you're really building the muscle to lead well.
And all that hard work, it pays off. It leads to the third and final stage, skilled leadership. At this point, wisdom isn't something you have to go looking for. It's just become a habit. It's baked into everything. Your decisions, how you communicate, even the way you set up incentives, it all just flows from these deep, mature principles. And the whole organization starts to look like this, focusing on legacy and long-term impact.
So, this progression is everything. You start with that raw energy of naive zeal, you move into the intentional, focused growth of the disciplined learner, and you land in the ingrained wisdom of skilled leadership. This isn't some abstract idea, it's a clear, recognizable path for development in the real world.
Now, this practical framework didn't just appear out of thin air. Dr. Boje actually weaves together this really rich tapestry of ideas from philosophy and even from ancient wisdom to give it all this depth. He actually started out getting inspiration from the philosopher Martin Heidegger, who saw becoming as this kind of existential journey through time. But later on, he shifted his focus to the work of Karen Barad, who offers a totally different take. For Barad, becoming is all about agential realism, which is a fancy way of saying that our actual concrete actions and decisions, which he calls cuts, literally create new realities.
And it's really important to add a critical note here. Dr. Boje himself is very clear about distancing his own work from Heidegger. He cites Heidegger's deeply problematic political ties to National Socialism and his anti-Semitism, and for a lot of people, those associations just taint his philosophical ideas. And this table here, it just brilliantly lays out all these different perspectives. You can see how each one thinks about the stages of becoming. For Heidegger, it's about this rise and fall over time. For Barad, it's about those physical cuts that make new realities pop into existence. And then you see the biblical tradition, which Bourget points out frames it as a path toward wisdom, which, of course, lines up perfectly with those 3 leadership stages we just talked about.
Speaking of those deeper roots, Dr. Boge brings up this incredible metaphor from the Psalms. It's an ancient image, but man, it just perfectly captures the feel of mature, resilient leadership.
So let's break this down. A leader who's like this tree, they're rooted in something way deeper than just the latest quarterly report. They're grounded in purpose, in values. And that's what makes them resilient, able to get through the storms and the bad market cycles that always come. They're not just bearing fruit for themselves, but for everybody else through mentorship and building a legacy. And get this, they stay innovative and full of life, even as the organization gets older.
So, okay, this is all fascinating theory, but what do we actually do with it? How do we take all this and apply it to our own work, our own lives? Let's get practical.
The first step is just some honest self-assessment. Turn the lens on yourself. When you look at those 3 stages, naive zeal, disciplined learner, and skilled leadership, where do you see yourself right now? And remember, the idea isn't to just race to the finish line. It's to really understand what each stage demands from you. And once you know where you are, you can take some really clear, practical steps. 1. Just acknowledge your current stage, no judgment. 2. Build the support structures you need for growth. Maybe that's a personal board of advisors. Maybe it's a peer group for some honest talk. And 3, actively practice forecaring. Literally schedule time to look past the urgent stuff and anticipate what's coming.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. Based on everything we've just gone over, what stage of becoming really describes you, or maybe your organization, right now? And maybe even more important, what's the very next step? Just one step that you need to take on that path.
Because as Dr. Bourget puts it so perfectly, every stage is an arena for transformation. It's not just a checkpoint to get through or a crisis you have to survive. It is the very place where your transformation is already happening, right now.
All right, let's get into one of the most
That's what I do. Okay, so this is just a breakout to say what stage of becoming are you at? What's the next thing you'd like to take on in your own reflecting on your own journey? And so we'll do that for, I don't know, 6 or 8 minutes, and then in pairs, I think would be good. And then we'll have some discussion, and then we'll do the case on Domino's Pizza, and then come back and talk about whatever we want to talk about. So we're doing good on time, so that's excellent. Does anybody have any questions? You'll be in pairs and you'll share a story. You take turns, manage your time. When you come out, one person will talk about their story. Can't talk about another person's story. You don't have story rights to somebody else's story, just your own. And just share for a couple minutes. We don't need to know the whole of it, just something that's insightful. So let me build the rooms. So we'll do 6 rooms. All right. Create. That's good. That's good. That's good. I got to swap here. Got Tom in the same room. Okay. Okay, that's good. That's good.
How long will we be in the rooms?
Oh, I think 7, 8 minutes ought to be good, don't you think? So you'll see a button there. Might be a little hard to find if Jim, if you're on a cell phone, but he found it already. So you should find a button, Joy and Olivia, to push, and then you're in a room. Otherwise, you stay here with me. Tom, you're in a different room than Olivia. If you find your buttons. You were in the same room and I had to split you up. Okay, Tom, did you find your room? Your button?
Yeah, I was in room 4 with Jack, but then I bounced back here for some reason.
Okay. I'm going to bounce Jack back here. Okay. I'm bouncing him out. Let me go there. I'm going to tell him. Okay, so that's not working. Oh, there's Jack. Hi, Jack. Tom got bounced out, so we're going to have you in the main lobby here. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much. And let's see, Don Carolyn. Everything else stacks up pretty nice. I'll just hang out with you guys if it's okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Because
I
the
mean,
rooms are pretty well balanced, and I don't want to mess it
Right,
up.
there's an odd number.
Yeah. So we'll I'll start timing. We'll give us a couple extra minutes. Time. Here's a
so
clock.
tell us, David, we were talking about our transformation, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Where you're at, what's the next thing of your becoming, whatever you're trying to become on your journey?
That is if I can go first for a second, that's something that's paramount in my mind right now. What am I actually trying to become? So I'm putting these books out, and I'm still going through this transformation. It started when I had a near-death experience 7 years ago. And what I've come to realize is that I had that dream about reaching 1 million people. So it's like my mind is now locking in on that. I have no idea how I'm going to.
Strategy was to jump to step 2, confession. They launched their famous "Oh Yes, We Did" campaign, publicly admitting how bad their pizza was. But the most important step was the third one, forsaking the old ways. It wasn't enough to just say sorry. They had to prove it by completely reinventing their product from the crust up. And let's be super clear, this was not some clever PR stunt. This was an unbelievably risky, high-stakes gamble. They literally took all those negative story seeds, all that awful criticism, and made it the star of their own national ad campaign. They were betting the entire company on the idea that radical honesty could actually work. This bet didn't just change their pizza recipe, it fundamentally changed the entire company's DNA. It shifted them from being a static, finished thing to something that was always in motion, always improving. And this right here just lays it all out so perfectly. The old Domino's was in a state of being. It was rigid, static. It thought, we are a fast pizza company. That's it. End of story. The new Domino's entered a state of becoming. It became fluid, dynamic, focused on quality, and, this is the most important part, it started actively inviting feedback to fuel its own evolution. Its identity wasn't a finished product anymore. It was a constant work in progress. This quote from the CEO at the time, Patrick Doyle, just nails this new mindset. Listen to that language. Your comments helped us. He's not just passively accepting criticism, he's actively reframing the customer. They went from being critics to being collaborators. The very people who hated their pizza were now being credited as partners in building the new one. Genius. Okay, but a brilliant ad campaign is one thing. How did Domino's make sure this transformation wasn't just a flash in the pan? How did they make it stick for the long haul?
Well, they were smart. They built systems to make listening a permanent part of their culture. The Domino's Tracker, for example, creates total transparency. Their app openly encourages and, yes, displays all customer feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly. These tools are designed to constantly generate new micro-story seeds, making it impossible for the company to ever put those old filters back up. They are basically forced to keep listening, forever.
So really, it all boils down to this virtuous cycle. In the before stage, they ignored the feedback, and it led to a crisis. Then they made a bet to listen, which turned their critics into co-creators. And that put them in a permanent state of becoming, using new recipes and new tech to not just survive, but to dominate the market. And the results? Did this crazy bet actually pay off? Oh, you have no idea. The company that was once tied for last place in quality with a Kids Arcade became, by 2017, the #1 pizza company in the entire United States by sales. It's one of the most stunning turnarounds in modern business history.
So what's the big takeaway for all of us here? The story of Domino's proves that the most painful, harsh criticism you'll ever receive isn't something you should run from or filter out. In fact, it's the complete opposite. It's the very seed of your next great success. The only question is, are you brave enough to tear down your own filters and truly, deeply listen?
I prepared a little something to kick us. Okay. All right. So let's look at the time. I don't think we got enough time for a complete breakout and then coming back. And so let's just open it up. We are the breakout. So let's take a few comments on tape and then I'll turn off the tape. So yeah, I'll just start. That's one of the things I'm learning to do is jump into the feedback. I think it's easy for me to barrel ahead and get into new shiny toys without getting the feedback on the old toys I created and sticking with it, So that's the comment for today. I don't know if you saw, but for me, it relates to what we were talking about with veterans and stuff too. Holding everything in rather than dealing with it. Confess is probably a little bit extreme in what Domino's was doing. And for veterans, it's more about having a sympathetic listener, an empathetic listener, put it that way, to be there with, and then doing the discipline. So the stages were a little different. I don't know. What do you think, Grace Ann? You know more about this stuff, the restoring process. What do you think? She loves Domino's pizza, by the way. That's her favorite pizza, other than the ones from Italy.
So, I'm relating it to my own, work recovering from the stroke. And what I see is that my brain thinks I'm doing things a certain way, but the reality is it's not happening that way. And so I need the constant feedback to adjust and to relearn. And so I think that the dynamism of the world and change, that we're not so good at addressing that. So we need the feedback to constantly readjust our story and our view of the future and what we're aiming for, but with an accurate view of where we are now, which we're not getting when we have the old stories still there.
Yeah. Oh, Olivia, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, and this kind of dovetails to what Grace Ann was saying. When Carl and I were in a breakout room, we kind of got this thought that it's more like a spiral, that we are maybe getting up higher and then we get feedback. We may have to go to the lower level, but we're at a higher base. And so that there's just this continuous evolutionary overlying path upward, but we might feel like we're getting set back. And I also, from the veteran story, from your story, David, and others, and then the Domino's, I think there's this terrible fear of being exposed. And then once we do it, there's such a relief. So I'm sure other people may have thoughts about that.
Carol has a thought. Go ahead, Carol. You have to unmute your button.
I have three disparate thoughts. I'll try to do them quickly. I have to get them out. I couldn't stop thinking as you spoke about the veterans issue, about children of the Holocaust and the syndrome of protecting parents who had been through so much of the next generation. And that's highly personal. The second is, Olivia, Dawn and I talked too about the spiral. And I think that's a really important metaphor, because you could go through all three stages of becoming at a very low level or way up. And some of that has to do with where you are in adult development. And the third piece that is really poignant is how do these different levels of becoming become in our awareness, like Grace Ann was talking about. And it brings me back to this such a simple thing about Sengi's systems thinking, that the very first level was this big rubber band.
Yeah.
Current reality is here. I can't buy those rubber bands anymore. They stopped making them. And where you want to go is here. And if you stand in a room and you use that rubber band and you say, so I'm here and I want to go here, how can I do it? I either go step by step, which is what we usually talk about in change management, or I lower my vision. And what this methodology went aha for me is it's another way to look at it, that it doesn't have to be either or. It's a process. So this was extremely exciting to me.
Did you get all three things?
Do I have to repeat them?
No,
Holocaust, systems thinking, and
system
spirals.
thinking, that's the one. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a big fan of spirals. So Jack, go ahead.
Feedback can be a little tricky. Feedback, if somebody has their own agenda and they want to keep you in a certain status quo that makes their comfort level more satisfied, they might give you feedback that's really in their best interest and not yours. And so feedback, you have to make sure you have a deep trust with that other person and that they are authentic in wanting to really help you with something where you might have a blind spot. So, I'm thinking of Abraham Lincoln. All of Abraham Lincoln's cabinet was always against every single thing he wanted to do. But when he got reelected in 1864, he won by a landslide because the public followed Abraham Lincoln's ideas much, much more than his cabinet members, who went very much. There was only one man in his cabinet, Stewart, I think his Secretary of State, that supported him, but everybody else was very against him. But he went past that and became much more successful in his second election. But there's a lot of that out there. So feedback has to be contextualized within who's giving you the feedback, and do they have an agenda with the feedback they're giving you? Thank you.
So Dawn, feedback for workaholics.
I was just sitting here thinking, working at my company for 15 years, I've had 3 situations where I had really got into it with my bosses, and every single one of those 3 situations was around feedback, survey, reporting out on information that came from an employee survey, them not wanting me to tell everything that was said, literally remove it, or all 3 times. And so this is very interesting to me. Yeah.
Thank you, Dawn. Appreciate it. So where do we go from here? I will say that this is my group that can give me feedback. Okay, I'll give you one. Grace Ann gives me feedback all day long. I try to do these dishes. So that's my job. And every single time I do the dishes, she finds 1, 2, or all of them. They got, I don't know, stuff left on them. And every time I say, I'm going to get that dish clean, I rub it, I scrub it, and I scrub it, and then I put it down, and then Grace Ann comes and checks it, I'm at a 97% failure rate. So anyway, I don't know if that helps. Dawn, did you have something else to say? Well, we want to hear from you anyway, because we don't get to have you visit that often. So,
no, I didn't have anything else to say. I just said I have to figure out how to maneuver those conversations to tell the truth. I've got to tell the truth, but still, understand where they're coming from. But we got to tell the truth. I said, how can we fix it if we don't want to talk about it? Right? How are we going to fix it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I first met Grace Ann. I said, well, I'm a pretty strong character, and I'm hard to deal with. And she says, well, I train horses. I have whips. So, you know, so I knew I had somebody there that could be authentic and wasn't going to back down, and that's just who she is. Grace Ann, you have to unmute. So.
Yeah, I like Jack's comments about feedback and Dawn's also. And it reminded me that one of the things I've appreciated lately is that my trainer has the proper training and background herself. Probably half of the people in the horse world don't even know to look at the things that she's looking at. And so it's not just intention, it's ability. Some people don't have the ability to give us the information we need. And then once in the storytelling thing, like Dawn's example, some people don't have the perspective to interpret it correctly and to make it be helpful rather than punitive or appearing to be punitive.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, you're muted. Dave, you're muted.
David,
Okay, unmute. So I watched Grace Ann, and she's on this horse. He's I'll call him an alpha male. He's the head of the herd, and he's kind of hard to deal with. He's always wants to resist, and if Grace Ann shows any kind of weakness, he's going to take advantage of it. So I'm watching Grace Ann. She's disciplining this horse the way she disciplines me about dishes. This big old horse, and he's named Clyde, and he's big and he's muscular, And I see her like whack. She doesn't hit me that much, by the way, but it's like, and she's got one good hand, and the arm is kind of faking it to be good, the left one. And it's scary to watch, but I'm not a horse coach. I don't know if she's in balance on that horse. I don't know if her seat's in adjustment, her leg. I'm looking at it, I'm going, I'm sorry, Grace Ann, I don't see anything that you're doing I can comment on. So just about the skill stuff, as a coach. But I have to learn. I'm going to learn, because some days the coach is not there. Grace Ann's coach, I'm there. And I'm the one that's the lifeguard in case she needs me. Anyway, I hope you had a good session today. And if you can make it Friday, make it Friday. If you can make it for Vanessa's thing Thursday, make that. We'll have another session, a couple sessions next week, and then we break for the conference in Long Beach. So, yay. So, yeah. So did you like this thing on becoming? I kind of dove off the high dive board, left Heidegger behind, and then went into it. The next one is deeper into my own learning about energies from a guru that Grace Ann and I share, Gurudev Shichibanu, who passed away a few years ago, and Pramoda Ben, his wife, is still there. Anyway, life-changing stuff for me. I hope it's good for you too. So that's about it for today. Have a good sessions, all of you. Thanks, Ickno. Thanks for Ickno for coming today. We appreciate meeting you for the first time. Come back again. I'm going to sign out now.
Hey, thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.